Welcome back to Coffee with Craig. It is a fine Monday morning. Apologize about that. We appeared to have a little bit of a hiccup with our feed, but we're back and we're here. Today we're going to talk about the project or research that's being done by the Gun Violence Prevention Center that's based at University of California at Davis, which is basically about 15 minutes away from here across the Yolo Causeway. Now, you might remember this is an institution that was actually created with the idea of creating anti-Second Amendment propaganda for the California State Legislature to be able to use as a foundation to implement whatever gun restrictions, gun control it is that they desire to implement. Well, one of the things that they have been studying has to do with the issue of background checks. And so they did a study on the issue of background checks in a couple of different states where they've most recently been instituted and came up with some very interesting results. The results basically has pretty much basically said that that the laws that were passed are having little to no effect. See, they figured that you would see in these particular states there were already requirements for background checks if you purchased it from a seller, or from a licensed seller. So if you purchase a firearm from a licensed seller, federal law already requires that you have a background check. But in these states, private sellers were not required to conduct background checks. Well, in several states, they found that there was Washington, Colorado, and Delaware. And what they found was that in at least two of those states, there was almost no increase in background checks. Now, what they suggest is what they're saying is basically one of two things is either happening. Either people are not purchasing firearms from private sellers, which we know is not the case, or people are simply not complying with the law. Go figure. But one of the things that Garen Wintemute points to is that only in Delaware, where there was an increase from 22 to 34%, and it was pretty much based on the type of firearm. That was the only place where you actually saw an increase in the number of background checks. In the other two states, Colorado and Washington, there was basically virtually no change in behavior. In other words, what they're finding is, people are still buying and selling firearms from private individuals, and they're just not complying with the law. In fact, in some of these cases, in some of these states, some law enforcement is basically saying, we're not going to enforce the law. So you're just going to have to figure it out. And when they say they're not enforcing the law, they're basically saying that they believe it is unconstitutional and therefore are not going to enforce it. It's really interesting and I think that's a big thing that we're going to start to see with a lot of these laws is that they become so infringing, and I use that word intentionally. They are such infringements that individuals are simply going to say, look, no, I have the Constitution on my side. And it goes back to what we were talking about last week, where you don't have to argue in support of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the argument. Shall not be infringed. And when you really understand and you go back and you read what the term infringed means, it is probably one of the strictest words that is included there, because it's saying that no, you're not going to do anything to infringe, impede. You're not going to get in the way of an individual's ability to be able to keep and bear arms. And yet they keep passing laws that are restricting it, that are making it tougher for individuals to be able to do so, that are creating lists that they want to put us all on so that they can make sure that, when they do finally decide we're going to come for their guns, then they know exactly where they want to go. They know exactly where to go in order to obtain those. But I think the message of this, once again, is that there is a talk. The non-compliance movement in some states is real, And I think that those who are seeking to ban firearms or take firearms away are going to have to figure out, they're going to have to come to know and understand that that is just going to be the case, that they're just going to be people who are not going to comply with the law. Just like in Australia. In Australia, there are still hundreds of thousands of people in Australia who still own firearms, even though to a large degree most of them have been banned. There's still a lot of people who own them, and they're not giving them up. And because they believe in, once again, they may not have a constitutional right to defend themselves, but they definitely know that they have a fundamental human right to be able to defend themselves, and they are going to avail themselves of it. And that, my friends, is the rest of the story. So let's see what you folks have to say about this particular topic. Let me see here. Any questions, any comments? Butch Richards just says, exactly. Well, yeah, when it comes down to it, most of these folks are not going, I don't want to put this. People who believe in a fundamental right and exercising a fundamental right are not going to let they're not going to let a law get in the way of them being able to exercise it. And there are some people who are law-abiding citizens who will do whatever they can do in order to be in compliance with the law. And in some cases, some of these laws put people in such tough situations because in the end, you have to decide, do I exercise my rights? Do I put myself at risk? Or do I comply with the law? Jeff here says, I will not comply with these laws. I'm still buying, yeah. Okay, so here's the deal, Jeff. Here's what I would do. What I wouldn't do, whether you choose to comply or not, I definitely wouldn't say that I plan to participate in illegal activity. I probably wouldn't post it on social media. But I get what you're saying, Jeff. I do. I feel you. I'm there with you. But yeah, I don't know if I would tell people all of the crimes that I plan to commit on Facebook. Just saying. Jonathan says we need more background checks. I like that. Criminals should be doing background checks and registration when they unlawfully require guns for the express purpose of unlawfully carrying them and unlawfully using them in crimes. Right. Because, well, yeah, sure, they're going to go and they're going to go register their firearms. They're going to make sure they get a registration number and make sure they have serial numbers on them. And, they're definitely going to make sure that they don't have any, standard capacity magazines. Got to make sure they got the 10 rounders because, well, hey, they would hate to add, one more thing onto the list of crimes that they're about to commit. You got to wonder about these folks sometimes. I think it's important to know that the real issue here is we're finding that background checks, once again, are not making a difference because criminals are not going into gun stores and buying firearms. If they are, they're using straw purchasers. And clearly, straw purchasing firearms is already a crime. So I don't know why you need additional stuff. Anyway, once again, just my 2 cents. Well, folks, looks like that is going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Didn't exactly seem to be a topic that was high on everyone's list, but hey, we'll talk about more tomorrow. Oh, wait, hold on. What do we have here? We have Caesar says, how about getting the criminals to follow their laws? I'll follow. Yes, they don't follow their own laws, but they want us to follow them. That is how it is. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. I'm going to go ahead and tune out. You guys take care. Have fun. Stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.